Welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much.
Vera Pauw, the latest twist, and I suspect it's not going to be the final twist in this thing. We probably should be nearing the end of Vera Pauw storylines, but
yeah,
not anytime soon, I don't think.
I know, I was really curious as to whether she would release a statement or whether she would just do like a sit-down interview with someone.
Koi gig her.
Yeah, well... We're still open to it if she wants. We're still there. I was actually listening back to the interview we did with her. I forgot that it was like one of the first 10 episodes we ever did in Koi Gig.
Right.
And it felt like it was far further into our journey than it actually was. But I was listening back to it yesterday because I was just kind of curious as to what she said to us. That was about 2 years ago now. What she said to us in terms of what she wanted to achieve with the team, where she wanted to bring them. I mean, in fairness, a lot of the stuff she said, she did actually achieve. I kind of challenged her on the fact that she didn't really come over here to games all that much, or I don't think she attended all that many WSL games either that Irish players were competing in. And I think when you look at what is coming out and some of the reasons why the FAI said that maybe her vision didn't totally align with what they wanted to do going forward, I wonder, was that like playing into things a little bit? Because I think we've heard all the stuff about the players and the fact that a lot of them weren't apparently all that happy with how things were being run, but also all the rumblings out of the FAI are that they want to have like a cohesive strategy from the younger age groups all the way up to senior level, and you would think that would kind of need someone who is maybe either over here or able to bop back and forth a little bit more than she possibly was at the time. So it's going to be interesting to see if they do come out. The Irish Times had reported a couple of days ago that Mark Cannon was going to talk about the results of the report, but I wonder now that Vera has released her statement,
it becomes a bit of a tit for tat.
Yeah.
Can I ask you maybe an simplification of it on my part, but the point about the underage to senior strategy and the point about like the direction of the team or the way the team plays, like they all seem imminently fixable things. The detail of what's going on behind the scenes with the players, we've mentioned there's been no social media posts. That is certainly an oddity,
yeah,
right? But there are a bunch of factors there that I think in terms of progress, we've said this 100 times on the footballing side, that if it was just about that, then she probably would have signed a new contract.
Oh yeah, I don't think it's just about that. Like, I think you can't, if the FAI did a review and as reported, if they found that like only 2 players said they actually wanted Vera Pauw to stay on, I don't think that's a sustainable situation. No matter, like somewhere there, no matter what it was about, there was a breakdown between the squad and her. And
do you think it's more about that than the stuff that's happened in the US and the uncertainty about that?
I think all that sort of stuff fed into it. I think you can't take away from the fact that the FAI stuck so strongly behind her whenever that stuff first came out, in the fact that they, like, I remember exactly where I was sitting on my couch when that story broke, and I had heard stuff about it before and I had assumed it was going to come out at some stage, and I really thought that was going to be a sticking point for the FAI and for the team, but it wasn't. And obviously Vera has said multiple times that she totally refutes all the allegations, and it was a whole thing after the World Cup that she was going to actually pursue that, but she wanted to, you know, get the tournament over with first before she did. And I really thought that was going to be something that the FAI was going to have to come out and talk about, but it was within a couple of hours of that report coming out that they automatically supported her. And we've heard since that they talked to a couple of the senior players, and Vera always said that she talked to a couple of the senior players and they gave her absolute support. But as time went on and they had to answer more and more questions, it almost became less about Vera and more about the team having to answer for Vera. And I think that frustrated, I mean, you saw the press conference with Katie McCabe just before they went off to the World Cup. Like, she was so
directed at the media. That was my reading of it at the time, but you think maybe...
I think it was a little bit like she was definitely really annoyed with all the journalists in the room for asking questions constantly. Like, I think there were, in like a half-hour press conference, there was maybe 2 or 3 questions asked about the actual game. Like, I asked who was fit, like, was everyone fit and ready? And also I asked Katie, like, what was it like leading the team out, knowing that that was their final game in Tala before going to France? And you could see the kind of relief on her face having to answer those sort of questions. But it also felt like, and I know, like, everyone, I've said this a couple of times, but I also know that everyone in the room felt the exact same way. Like, whenever Vera and Katie left, everyone in the room kind of went, okay, we've just had to go through that. That's not how we wanted the final press conference. And I think, like, a lot of people have been saying to me the last couple of days that, you know, the media wanted Vera out, or, you know, I wanted Vera out, or whatever it was. That has never been the case. It's just been like, there's been a lot of stories that you've had to ask about. And you can't really get away from asking about them. Like, I would love to have spent the last couple of months just talking about the World Cup and the history and how amazing. But you have to ask. Like,
the FAI could have helped that press conference, by the way. They could have just come out and said, we understand you have to ask those questions. We're going to do 15, 16 minutes on it. Let's get that done and spend the rest. They haven't helped themselves. And I think that, like, I don't know, organisations don't tend to overly self-reflect on statements like Vera Pauw's, for example, and say, okay, what is there for us to learn in all of this? But it does strike me that there are plenty of things for the FAI themselves.
Oh yeah, I think so. And like, Nathan and I have talked about this so many times over the last couple of months. Like, when the report first came out, the FAI had taken like a week or 5 days or something and just said, okay, we have this report, we're going to look into it ourselves, we're going to talk to some of the players, we're going to talk to Vera Pauw, and then came out with something, you'd be like, okay, some due diligence went into that, or they've talked to people and everyone in the camp is happy, and a lot of the questions would have been answered then. But because it all happened so quickly, there wasn't the opportunity to do that. And then even with the way this whole situation has happened, you know, everyone was basically saying pre-March that Vera was going to get, you know, a new contract. I'm personally against giving people a new contract just before a tournament.
It's very hard, isn't it?
Even if it's a team that's never qualified for the tournament.
It is a little bit different, but like, I don't know, I just think of like Jorge Vilda getting one just before the Euros last year, and then Spain had a terrible Euros and all the stuff that's happened since. I think it's a precarious time to go into negotiations unless you're like England trying to keep Serena Wiegmann or something, and you know there's a lot of dogs at your door being like,
I don't think there's ever a black and white. Like at the Andy Farrell example, you're like, I know he signed up for another year, whatever, and they've well managed that sort of, we don't need to have the conversation in the middle of a World Cup.
Yeah.
But it's just impossible, because sometimes you want to keep them, sometimes they want to find something else.
Yeah, but also I feel like it's slightly easier as well with rugby, in the sense that you're not going into like, say, a year and a half long qualifying situation. You know, they have the World Cup now. Technically it's the rankings that matter more than any of the tournaments. Six Nations come around every year. Autumn Internationals come around every year. You know, it's easier to get those kind of shorter term deals, whereas I think with the Nations League kicking off on the 23rd, which is like so soon, you're probably looking at, okay, well, qualifying period, what can she do? It's the same with Stephen Kenny. Like, every time we talk about his job, it's about, well,
that's every time.
Yeah. Can we qualify for the next tournament?
We'll obviously hear more about the FAI's handling of this whole thing, but as Vera says in her statement, she says some discussions were held with players and staff before and during the World Cup, which undermined my position and had an impact on our team building process. That is perhaps for another day. That's an interesting line. But also, like, that would be fascinating, the fact that there were discussions happening ongoing during the World Cup that clearly, you know, if that is true and if that is the case, surely that's something the FAI might reflect on. Yeah,
no, definitely. But I also think, like, putting something like that in there, as you say, it's something that you're going to... It's teasing, it's dangling something, it's asking to be asked about it, which maybe is what she wants right now, which is like totally understandable. It's obviously been an incredibly difficult time for her. I, like, when I was over there, I thought, from everything that she was saying, that she had quite a good relationship with the FAI people who were over there, that she felt like she was quite supported by them. Obviously, you don't see everything that's going on, so what she was saying publicly could have been very, very different to what was actually happening behind the scenes. But I always got the impression that, if not, you know, obviously you're going to not get on with people time to time, but it never felt like a particularly precarious relationship, although I know she was quite annoyed heading over the fact that, like, the contract situation hadn't been wrapped up a little bit sooner.
Last one for me, we're 3 weeks out obviously now from the Northern Ireland and Hungary games, and the last thing that we need is obviously the stink hanging over this stuff once the squad gather together. So is there an expectation of, like, obviously the ball is in the FAI's court now, and you would mention, did you say at the start that Mark Cannon was due to do something that may now not happen?
The Irish Times had reported a couple of days ago that he was going to talk a little bit about his review and what went into it and the reasoning, because he had to offer a recommendation to the board. So he was going to talk about, like, how he came to the recommendation that he gave, apparently.
So he may or may not do that, but I guess if he doesn't do that and doesn't do it soon, starts to leak into next week, starts to leak into the week after.
Well, this is the thing, because realistically the next time you're probably going to get a chance to talk to all the players, unless it comes up in one of the club press conferences, is that game. I know a couple of them are playing in the Championship has already started, so if one of them is put up for media, maybe. But like, I don't think many of them are going to be offering up any opinion until then, which also means that I feel like a lot of people have forgotten that this game against Northern Ireland, yeah, it's a historic moment because it's in the Aviva and it's the first time ever and all that sort of stuff, but it also is a really important game in terms of our long-term qualification for the 2025 Euros. And this isn't the sort of thing you kind of want to have hanging over the team, so I don't know if it's a case where the FAI, or even, I'm sure Eileen Gleeson is involved in these conversations at the moment, being interim manager. Tom Elms is still in there as well, and he was assistant to Vera, and I know he worked with the under-16s before coming in full-time ahead of the World Cup to be the assistant, is quite embedded. I don't know if it's a case of them saying, right, we're going to put someone up to talk about it. They're going to talk about it, and then that's going to be that, and final. Because
it's hard even for her, particularly in the context, because we're back into the matches upcoming. Now we have to talk about all this stuff again.
Yeah.
I don't know. I do think when they sit down today to reflect on everything that's going on, I do think they need to be proactive and come out and nip this in the bud. If there wasn't a game for another 2 months, grand, leave it, and everybody.
But it's a matter of weeks.
About it, but
we were just talking yesterday. Was it yesterday's show? We were like, maybe they'll do a sort of a presentation for Vera at half time in the Northern Ireland game. That is absolutely gone now.
In fairness, I always thought that was going to be a little bit strange.
100%. Would have been weird. But it, as you say, for Eileen Gleeson and Tom Elms, bit of a tough situation for both of them, especially for Elms. Tom Elms was number 2. Usually number 2 is in cahoots with number 1, and they have a good relationship.
I think they can listen. It's done, and I don't really have a huge amount to say about it. It's not really my business. There's other stuff going on.
I think it's probably easier for Eileen Gleeson to do that. I think it's a little bit harder for Tom Elms, since he was part of the World Cup squad, and obviously if there were issues in the camp, I assume he was privy to them or would have noticed that something was awry.
None of that has been talked about, is the thing.
Yeah.
Right? We don't have anything on the record from anybody saying that there was anything up in that regard, outside of the obvious sort of silence emojis and stuff like that. But right, again, not the last time we'll come back to this, Kathleen. And you and I probably feel as equally.
Come along to EP tomorrow to hear more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You looking forward to it tomorrow?
Yeah, should be good. I haven't been to EP since I was 13.
What were you doing at EP when you were 13?
My dad, funny enough, my dad was actually performing on the Midfield stage.
What was he doing?
So he's a writer, so he was doing a set there with a very good guitar player, and he basically had written a piece and they had music accompanying it and 2 singers, so he would read and then they... Yeah.
Full circle. Life comes at you
fast.
I
was joking. I read 2 books on the day that we were down there because I was so disinterested and I wasn't allowed to wander off by myself, so I lay on a big beanbag outside, read 2 books and was delighted with myself.
Well, your dad is a wise man. It's great fun. It's so much different than anything else we do, and there's a bit of wildness about it. I think Shane can attest
to it from
last year.
Jesus, yeah.
Right, what a game have we got this weekend? We have Liverpool against Villa. It's not on the telly box, and we will have full live commentary of it on Off the Ball coming your way on Sunday. And we've Manchester United against Arsenal, and it's not lost on us that we have one from either camp here. And
we're very neutral sports broadcast.
Oh, neutral.
Both
Shane and I have never fought on air about Arsenal United.
Both title contenders, right?
Not a chance for United title contenders. Now we do our slot on a Friday. Who you got?
Yeah.
So we won't give full spoilers away, but I will say that a lot of us heavily leaning towards a home win in this Arsenal game at the weekend. It's tough to see United getting anything out of it. If they play
just the time that United.
I was going to say it's Arsenal,
maybe, but
I feel like if you're going to pull out a performance at any stage, it's going to be against us.
Possibly. That would frustrate United fans even more, because you'd be like, well, why haven't you done this all season? I know they've got 2 wins already, so that's maybe
you'd also be delighted at the fact that you beat Arsenal. Even though we haven't been up to scratch in years, I feel like United still get a particular pleasure out of beating us.
Yeah, it's true. That rivalry still lingers.
United get a particular pleasure out of beating anyone, I'd say, at the minute.
At the moment,
let's face it.
The results aren't bad.
No, they've won 2 out of 3.
But the results aren't bad.
Yeah.
And it's deadline day, so who knows what happens. Although
we did draw against Fulham, so
any money left to spend.
Yeah.
Right, Kathleen, thanks a million for that. Chat to you tomorrow.
See you
Looking
tomorrow.
forward to it. 2:30, apparently, Shane said, at the Minefield area. We'll have Brian Fenton there. There is talk about Roddy Collins. I've no idea. That's probably just...
You're
I'm
just
just
teasing
throwing
people.
that out there, like it may or may not happen. Nathan will be there as well, so, don't let that put you off.